I never expected that something so hurtful could happen at my son's wedding. But it did, and it shook me to my core. When I saw my daughter-in-law, Jenna, with that smug smile on her face, I knew things weren't as they seemed. I had been waiting for this day for so long, dreaming of watching my son, Luke, marry the love of his life. I imagined what it would feel like to finally be part of that celebration, to feel included in their joy. But instead, it became a day I would never forget for all the wrong reasons. The wedding ceremony went smoothly, or so I thought. The guests were laughing, the flowers were beautiful, and my son's smile was as bright as ever. But when it came time for dinner, the atmosphere changed. We all sat down at the long table, and there I was, at the far end, like an afterthought. I tried to brush it off, telling myself that the distance was just a formality. After all, it was their special day. But then, the first hint of disrespect came. I asked Jenna if she wanted any of the mashed potatoes. She smiled at me, a little too sweetly, and said, "No thanks, Mom. I think you should taste them first, just to be sure." Her voice wasn't harsh, but the way she said it sent a chill down my spine. I reached for the dish, my hand trembling slightly. That's when it happened. In one quick, calculated motion, Jenna pushed my face right into the steaming pile of mashed potatoes. The guests gasped, but no one stepped in. I heard laughter, but it wasn't from anyone who cared about me. The room felt like it was closing in on me. My heart raced, my hands shook, and the only thing I could think about was how humiliating this moment was. I could feel the heat of the potatoes on my skin, the stares of the people around me, but all I could do was sit there in silence, wiping the mess from my face. It wasn't the mashed potatoes that hurt the most. It was the complete lack of care, the disregard for the woman who had spent years loving and supporting this family. My son, Luke, just sat there, not meeting my eyes. I wanted to say something, to scream, to demand an explanation. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not at that moment. Instead, I just sat there, numb, as the rest of the evening unfolded without a word of concern from anyone. That's when I realized I wasn't part of their family anymore. I was an outsider, an inconvenience, someone they could humiliate without a second thought. I sat there, in the middle of a room full of people, feeling as if the world had just tilted on its axis. My face was still warm from the mashed potatoes, and though I wiped it away, the humiliation lingered. Jenna's laugh echoed in my mind, her voice still ringing in my ears. "Taste the food," she had said, as if it were a joke, as if I were a child who needed to be put in her place. My son, Luke, had said nothing, as if I was invisible. I had always tried to be the perfect mother, the one who made sure everyone was happy. I raised my children with love, with sacrifice, always putting them first. But now, in this moment, I realized that my love, my sacrifices, didn't matter to them anymore. After the incident, I excused myself from the table, pretending that I was fine. I couldn't stay there, not with everyone watching, not with Jenna's eyes on me, full of disdain. I made my way to the bathroom, my hands trembling with every step. Once inside, I leaned against the cold tiles, looking at myself in the mirror. I looked like a stranger. The woman who had always been the heart of the family now felt like an outsider. My hair was disheveled from the chaos, and my skin still carried the residue of the potatoes. But it wasn't the mess on my face that bothered me the most. It was the ache in my chest, the realization that I wasn't welcome here. It had been happening slowly, over time. Little by little, my family had been slipping away from me. I had started noticing the changes, the small moments when I was no longer included. The holidays that used to mean so much to me now felt hollow. Birthdays, family gatherings, even phone calls, all seemed to be slipping through my fingers. I told myself it was nothing, just a phase. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Luke, my son, had become distant. He was always busy, always with his wife, always too preoccupied with his own life to check in on his mother. I used to be the one he turned to. I used to be the one he called when he had a problem. Now, he barely even looked me in the eye. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself that maybe it was just the stress of wedding planning or the pressure of his new life. But this was different. Jenna had always been cold, but this was something new. It was calculated. It was deliberate. She had orchestrated this humiliation in front of everyone. She had made sure I felt small, insignificant. She had made sure I knew that I didn't belong. As I stood in the bathroom, I I took a deep breath and wiped away the last of the mashed potatoes from my cheek. I was angry, but more than that, I was hurt. I wasn't going to let this go. I wasn't going to let her treat me like this. I wasn't going to let my son's wife push me out of my own family. But what could I do? What could I say? The thought of confronting her, of causing a scene, made my stomach turn. I didn't want to be the troublemaker. I didn't want to cause problems at my son's wedding. But I couldn't just sit there and pretend everything was fine. I had to do something. The question was, what? What could I do that would make them realize the hurt they had caused me? I couldn't let them think they could treat me this way and get away with it. As I looked at my reflection, I made a decision. I wasn't going to play the victim. I wasn't going to let them see how badly they had broken me. No, I would play it smart. I would find a way to show them that I was still in control. I would make them regret the way they treated me. I would find a way to make them see that family meant something, and that respect was not a privilege to be taken lightly. I wasn't going to let Jenna win. Not this time. I spent the next few days and a days replaying that moment over and over in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jenna's smug expression the way she pushed my face into those mashed potatoes. It was as if she had planned it all, as if she had been waiting for that moment to remind me of my place in this family. But something had shifted in me. I wasn't going to let this go. Not now, not ever. My son, Luke, hadn't even tried to defend me. I hadn't expected him to shout at his wife, but a simple acknowledgement, a sign that he cared, would have meant the world. Instead, he had sat there, silent, pretending as if nothing was wrong. That hurt more than anything. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how much things had changed. When did I stop being the person they turned to? When did I become the one who was pushed aside, left to fend for herself while they built their perfect little world? I remembered the days when Luke was young, when he would run to me with tears in his eyes, when I was the center of his world. What had happened to that boy? I didn't know. What I did know was that I wasn't going to let this slide anymore. I wasn't going to be invisible. The wedding had ended, and I was left with a mix of emotions: anger, hurt, confusion. I wanted to confront Jenna, to make her understand what she had done, but I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. I knew she was counting on me being weak, on me not being able to stand up for myself. But she was wrong. I wasn't going to let her win. I spent the following week thinking, planning, and coming to terms with what I needed to do. I couldn't go on like this. I had to make it clear that I wouldn't be walked all over. The next time I saw Jenna, I knew I would have to face her, not with anger, but with quiet strength. I wasn't going to shout, and I wasn't going to cry. I was going to stand tall, look her in the eye, and make her understand that I was not someone to be disrespected. I would no longer be the quiet mother-in-law who silently endured. No, I was going to make my voice heard. And I wasn't just going to do it for me. I was going to do it for every woman who had ever been treated like they didn't matter, like they didn't deserve respect. It was time for me to take control back. The next weekend, I called Luke and asked if he and Jenna wanted to come over for dinner. I could tell by his voice that he was surprised, but he agreed. When they arrived, I greeted them at the door with a smile. Jenna looked uncomfortable, and Luke seemed distracted. But I didn't let that bother me. I had a plan, and I wasn't going to let anything distract me from it. We sat down to dinner, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. I had prepared everything just the way I liked it, and the house felt warm, welcoming. The air was different now, no longer filled with tension. Jenna, on the other hand, seemed uneasy, glancing around as if she were waiting for something to happen. I didn't know what she expected, but I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me squirm. After dinner, I stood up and walked to the kitchen. I grabbed the envelope I had prepared earlier and returned to the table. Luke looked up, and Jenna's eyes flickered to the envelope before quickly looking away. I placed it on the table in front of them, saying nothing. Luke looked at me, confused. "What's this?" he asked. I didn't answer immediately. I wanted them both to sit with the silence for a moment. Finally, I spoke. "This is a letter. It's a reminder of what respect looks like. It's a reminder of what it means to be family." Luke furrowed his brow, and Jenna shifted in her seat. "Mom, what are you talking about?" Luke asked, his voice tense. "Open it," I said simply. Luke hesitated but finally opened the envelope. His face changed as he read the contents. The letter was short, but the message was clear. It outlined the respect that every member of a family should show, regardless of age or position. It was a quiet declaration that I would no longer accept being treated like an afterthought. I watched their faces as they read. Jenna's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe. Luke was quiet, his gaze shifting between me and the letter. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Mom, I didn't realize, he trailed off, but I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Jenna, on the other hand, was still silent, her face unreadable. I didn't say anything for a long moment, just letting the silence hang in the air. Finally, I spoke again. I didn't do all of this for you to ignore me. I've spent my life caring for this family, and I'm not going to let you forget that. I may not be perfect, but I deserve respect. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of everything I had been holding in. I wasn't going to let anyone walk over me anymore. Not my son, not my daughter-in-law, no one. The days that followed felt like a blur. It was as though the incident at the wedding had put a crack in the foundation of my life, and now everything was shifting, slipping through my fingers. I could still feel the weight of that moment. The mashed potatoes on my face, the laughter that wasn't meant for me, the silence that followed. But I refused to let it consume me. I was done being a silent victim. I had done the right thing, spoken my truth, but the reality was harder than I had imagined. My son, Luke, hadn't been the same since. He avoided my calls, and when I did see him, there was a coldness in his eyes, a distance that wasn't there before. Jenna, too, kept her distance, but I could feel her watching me, waiting for me to crumble, waiting for me to give in. But I wasn't going to. Not anymore. One afternoon, I sat in my living room, staring at the framed family pictures on the wall. They had always been a symbol of togetherness, of love. But now, they felt like a reminder of everything I had lost. Luke and Jenna, happy and smiling, the image of the perfect couple. My heart ached as I remembered the woman I used to be, the mother who was always there, the one who made everything better. I had always been the one who gave, who supported, who put everyone else's needs above my own. But now, it was clear to me that they had forgotten. Or worse, they never cared. I needed to let them know that I was still here, that I was still important. I wasn't going to let them erase me from their lives, not without a fight. I decided to visit them. It wasn't going to be easy, and I knew I would have to confront them head on, but I was ready. I needed to take control, to show them that I wouldn't be treated like this anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed Luke's number. The phone rang for what felt like an eternity before he answered. Mom. His voice was distant, like he had been expecting my call but didn't want to answer. Luke, I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a long pause on the other end. What about? He asked, his tone sharp. I could feel the walls he had built between us, the walls I had once helped to tear down. I want to see you and Jenna, I said. We need to have a conversation. Another pause. Okay, he finally replied, his voice quiet. When? Tomorrow, I said, the decision made in that moment. I'll be there at noon. The next day, I arrived at their house. I stood outside for a moment, looking at the door, trying to steady my nerves. I hadn't been here in weeks, not since the wedding. The house looked the same, but somehow, it felt different. When Jenna answered the door, she gave me a tight smile. It was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind that said everything was fine, but nothing was. Come in, she said, stepping aside. I walked inside, my heart pounding in my chest. Luke was sitting on the couch, staring at his phone. He looked up when I entered, but his gaze quickly moved to the floor. I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. What's this about, Mom? Luke asked, his voice flat, emotionless. I need you to understand something, I said, my voice firm. I'm not going to sit quietly and let you treat me like this. I raised you, Luke. I loved you, and I gave everything to this family. And for you to let Jenna treat me like I don't matter, I won't stand for it. Jenna opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, silencing her. No, I've been silent for too long. I've let you both walk all over me, but not anymore. I won't let you erase me from your lives. There was a moment of silence before Luke spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Mom, I didn't mean to. His words trailed off, but it was clear that he didn't know how to fix this. I looked at him, searching his eyes for the son I once knew. You didn't mean to? Or you just didn't care enough to notice? I asked, the words bitter in my mouth. He flinched at my tone, but he didn't argue. I'm sorry, he finally said, his voice soft. I didn't realize. No, you didn't, I said, my anger simmering beneath the surface. But you do now. And Jenna, You need to understand something too. I turned to face her. She met my gaze, but her eyes were full of defensiveness, as if she were preparing for a fight. I won't be treated like an afterthought in this family. I won't be humiliated, and I won't be ignored. I deserve better than that. Jenna opened her mouth, but I cut her off. Don't make excuses. I've had enough of your games. You've made it clear how little you think of me, but it ends today. There was a long pause. No one spoke. The air between us was thick with unspoken words, and I could see the guilt beginning to settle in their eyes. But I wasn't here for apologies. I was here to take my power back, to show them that I wasn't someone they could just push aside. I wasn't someone they could hurt without consequence. I'm done being quiet, I said, my voice unwavering. And I'm done being invisible. I left their house that afternoon feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. The conversation had been difficult, but it had been necessary. Luke and Jenna were both quieter than usual, and I could tell that the weight of my words had hit them harder than they expected. As I walked to my car, I couldn't help but feel a slight sense of victory. I had finally taken control of the situation, finally made them see that I wasn't just going to stand by and let them disrespect me. But even as I sat behind the wheel and drove away, I knew the battle wasn't over. It had just begun. The next few days were filled with silence. Luke didn't call, and neither did Jenna. I spent my time reflecting on everything that had happened, trying to make sense of it all. I had done the right thing, I knew that, but there was still a part of me that longed for things to go back to the way they used to be. I missed the days when Luke would come to me for advice, when Jenna and I would share a laugh over a cup of coffee. It seemed so far away now. I couldn't stop thinking about my son. I couldn't stop thinking about how I had raised him, how I had always put his needs above my own. And now, here I was, on the outside looking in, wondering how everything had gone so wrong. But I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. I couldn't change what had happened, no matter how much I wished I could. What mattered now was the future. What mattered was how I was going to move forward. The phone rang late one evening, shattering the quiet in my house. I picked it up, expecting it to be a telemarketer or another wrong number, but when I saw Luke's name on the screen, my heart skipped a beat. I hesitated before answering. "Hello," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, it's me," Luke said, his voice quieter than usual. I could tell that he was nervous. "I've been thinking about what you said, and I just wanted to call and apologize. I know I haven't been there for you like I should have been, and I'm sorry." I felt a lump form in my throat. It wasn't the apology I had been hoping for, but it was something. It was a start. "Luke," I said softly, "I don't need you to apologize. What I need is for you to remember who you are, who you used to be. I need you to remember that family isn't just about weddings or holidays. It's about being there for each other, no matter what. It's about respect." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, I thought he had hung up. But then he spoke again. "I know, Mom. I know. And I'm sorry for letting you down. I don't want to lose you." His words were simple, but they carried more weight than anything he had said in years. "I'm not going anywhere, Luke," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "But you need to show me that you mean it. You need to show me that you understand what I've been trying to say." He promised he would. Over the next few weeks, things slowly began to change. Luke started calling more often, and Jenna began to soften as well. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step in the right direction. For the first time in a long time, I felt like my family was healing. But even as I felt the smallest spark of hope, I knew the road ahead would be long. There were still things unsaid, still emotions left unaddressed. But I was ready to face them, ready to rebuild the relationships that had been strained for so long. I wasn't going to let the past define me. I wasn't going to let anyone push me aside again. I had learned that the most important thing was to stand up for myself, to make my voice heard. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was finally being seen again. I spent the next few days trying to piece together the strange, uneasy peace that had settled in my home. Luke's apology was a step, yes, but I still felt that there was so much left unsaid. Jenna, despite her initial coldness, seemed to be trying, but there was still a wall between us that I wasn't sure how to break down. I knew they both had their flaws, who didn't? But I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more going on, something deeper that we weren't addressing. It wasn't enough to simply apologize and move on. I needed more. I needed to feel like we were a family again. I kept waiting for the right moment to speak up, to share what I had been carrying in my heart for so long. but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Every time I looked at Luke, I saw the child he used to be, the one who would come running to me for comfort. And every time I looked at Jenna, I saw the woman who had taken that place, who had tried to push me out of the family in subtle, cruel ways. But I didn't want to dwell on the past anymore. I needed to move forward, to find a way to heal this broken connection. A week later, I invited Luke and Jenna over for dinner again. This time, I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to create an atmosphere of openness, to create space where we could talk about everything that had happened and, hopefully, find a way to move past it. When they arrived, the tension in the air was palpable. Luke looked tired, and Jenna's eyes kept darting around the room as if she were waiting for something to happen. We sat down to eat, the three of us at the table, but the silence was deafening. I could feel the weight of all the unspoken words between us, hanging in the air like a cloud. Finally, I put my fork down and looked at them both. "We need to talk," I said quietly. Luke looked up at me, his eyes full of guilt. "I know, Mom," he said, his voice soft. "I know I've been distant. I didn't mean to hurt you. He trailed off, as if searching for the right words. "I know, son," I said gently. "But it's not just about being distant. It's about respect. I've spent years giving everything for this family, and I feel like it doesn't matter to you anymore. I feel like I'm invisible." Jenna shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I didn't know what she was thinking, but I could tell she wasn't used to being confronted. "I don't want to feel like I'm begging for attention or approval," I continued. "I'm your mother, and I deserve to be treated with respect. I deserve to be part of this family, not just pushed to the side when it's convenient." Luke looked like he was about to say something, but he stopped himself. Instead, he just nodded. Jenna, on the other hand, opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. I wasn't sure what she was thinking, but the fact that she was silent spoke volumes. "I don't know where we go from here," I said, breaking the silence. "But I can't keep pretending like everything is fine. I want to be close to you both again, but we need to rebuild trust. We need to talk openly and honestly about everything. We can't just sweep things under the rug and hope they go away." Jenna finally spoke, her voice quiet but steady. "I know I've made mistakes," she said, looking at me. "I've been distant. I didn't realize how much I hurt you. I'm sorry." Her apology wasn't perfect, but it was something. It was a start. "I don't expect everything to be fixed right away," I said, my voice softening. "But we need to work together. We need to communicate. I can't do this alone anymore." Luke nodded again, his expression more serious now. "I know, Mom. I'll do better. I promise." It wasn't the resolution I had been hoping for, but it was a step in the right direction. I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in weeks. Maybe, just maybe, things could get better. Maybe we could rebuild this broken family. But it was going to take time. It was going to take effort. And most of all, it was going to take respect. I wasn't asking for perfection. I was just asking for the chance to be heard, to be seen. I wasn't going to be the mother who disappeared into the background anymore. I wasn't going to let my son and daughter-in-law push me aside. I had a voice, and I was going to make sure it was heard. Slowly but surely, we began to rebuild. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect, but it was a start. The journey was just beginning, and I was ready to take the first step toward healing. Together, we would find our way back to each other. I knew things were starting to change, but part of me couldn't help but wonder how long this newfound peace would last. Luke was trying, I could see that. He called more often, he showed up for family dinners, and he even started to express his thoughts more openly, though there was still a hesitation in his voice, a reminder of how much distance had built up between us. Jenna, on the other hand, was more difficult to read. She'd started offering small gestures, like helping me with the groceries or asking if I wanted company during an afternoon walk, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still off. There were moments when I caught her looking at me with a mixture of uncertainty and maybe even guilt, but those moments were fleeting. And there were other times when she seemed distant again, like she was slipping back into the role of the person I had grown to resent. I didn't know what was going on in her mind, and that uncertainty gnawed at me. But what mattered was that I had made it clear to both of them. I wouldn't be pushed aside again. I had earned my place in this family, and I wasn't going to settle for being treated like an afterthought. One afternoon, I received a call from Luke. He didn't sound his usual self. There was something urgent in his voice, something that made my stomach twist in knots. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked, his tone serious. "Of course," I replied, already bracing myself for something difficult. I'll come by later. When Luke arrived, he looked exhausted. His eyes were shadowed with concern, and he seemed nervous, as if there was something heavy on his chest. We sat down, and for a few moments, neither of us spoke. It was clear that whatever he had to say was going to be hard. Finally, Luke exhaled deeply and looked at me. I've been thinking a lot about everything. And I need to be honest with you, he started, his voice low. There's been a lot going on with Jenna. I don't know how to say this, but I think I've been blind to how much she's been affecting me, and you too. I nodded slowly, not entirely sure where this conversation was headed. What do you mean? I asked, my voice steady but cautious. Luke looked away for a moment, collecting his thoughts. She's been pushing me to choose sides, to choose her over you, he said, his words a sharp sting. I've let it happen without even realizing it. I didn't see how much it was hurting you, or how it was tearing us apart. I could feel the weight of his words sink in, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. I had suspected that Jenna had been trying to create distance between me and Luke, but hearing it from him was another thing entirely. I took a deep breath and looked at my son, really looked at him, and I saw the pain in his eyes, the same pain that had been in mine for so long. Luke, I'm not angry at you, I said softly. I'm hurt, but I'm not angry. What matters is that you're seeing things for what they are now. I don't want you to choose between me and Jenna. I just want to be part of your life again. There was silence between us, a heavy silence that spoke volumes. Luke finally met my gaze again, and this time, I saw a shift in him. It was like the walls he had built were slowly crumbling, and he was starting to see what really mattered. I've been trying to fix things with Jenna, but I've been so focused on her that I didn't realize how much I've been neglecting you, he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. I'm sorry, Mom. I really am. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I reached out and placed my hand on his, offering the comfort I had always given him, even in the most difficult moments. We'll fix it together, I said, my voice steady. We'll find a way back to each other. But it won't happen overnight. And it won't be easy. But I'm here, Luke. I always will be. That conversation marked a turning point for us. It wasn't a magical fix, and I didn't expect everything to be perfect right away. But it was a start, a genuine start. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I had my son back, not entirely, but enough to begin rebuilding. The next few weeks brought more moments of honesty, of vulnerability, and of trying to piece together the broken parts of our relationship. Luke started opening up more, and while Jenna still held a distance, I could see that there was some hesitation in her, too. Maybe she realized she couldn't keep living in the shadows of her own insecurities. Maybe, just maybe, she was starting to understand that respect wasn't something that could be demanded, it had to be earned. I wasn't asking for a miracle. I wasn't asking for things to go back to how they were before. But I was asking for something that felt even more important than that. A chance. A chance to rebuild, to heal, and to be seen again, not as a burden, not as an afterthought, but as a mother, a woman who deserved love and respect, just like anyone else. And for the first time in years, I felt like there was hope. A glimmer of hope that, with time, things would get better. The days following our conversation were filled with a strange kind of quiet. Things were better, yes, but the air still felt heavy, like we were all walking on eggshells, unsure of how to navigate the cracks that had formed between us. Luke made an effort, calling me more often, checking in, but there was still something missing. Jenna, too, had softened, but I could tell she was still guarded. I didn't blame her. There had been so much resentment, so much unspoken tension between us for so long. It would take time for any real healing to happen. But despite the awkwardness, there was a glimmer of hope that things could change, that we could rebuild. One afternoon, I received a call from Luke. His voice sounded different this time. It wasn't the same hesitant tone I had heard before. There was a new sense of purpose in his words, a determination that hadn't been there before. Mom, he said, I've been thinking a lot about everything. I want to do something special for you. I know I've let you down, and I've been so focused on my own life that I've completely neglected what's important. But I want to make it right. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to believe him, but another part of me was still wary. After everything that had happened, how could I just let go of the hurt? But I knew that if we were going to move forward, I had to at least try. What do you have in mind? I asked. I want to take you to that little cabin in the mountains, the one we used to go to when I was younger, he said, his voice filled with nostalgia. I know it's been a while, but I think it's time we all go back there, just the three of us. I want to reconnect, Mom. I want to show you that I'm trying, that I'm still your son. The idea took me by surprise, but it also warmed my heart. That cabin had been a place of peace, a place where our family had come together without the distractions of everyday life. It had been years since we had all been there, and I couldn't remember the last time we had taken the time to just be together. That sounds really nice, Luke, I said softly. I'd love to go. He sounded relieved. I'll take care of everything. I'll make sure it's a trip to remember. A week later, we were driving up to the cabin. The mountains stretched out before us, the air crisp and fresh, and the world seemed to slow down as we drove farther away from the city. The quiet was soothing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. When we arrived, everything was just as I remembered it. The cabin was nestled among the trees, the fireplace still in the center of the living room, and the scent of pine and wood smoke filled the air. It was like stepping back in time. The three of us sat on the porch, watching the sun set behind the mountains, the sky painted in shades of pink and orange. For a moment, there was no tension, no unspoken words. It was just us, together, in a peaceful silence. After dinner, Luke and I sat by the fire, talking about old memories, laughing about the times when he was young and full of energy. Jenna joined us later, and though there was still some unease between us, it was different. There was no anger, no resentment in the air. We were simply present, in the moment, trying to heal. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about everything that had happened, the hurt, the betrayal, and the distance that had grown between us. But I also thought about the future, about what it could be if we tried. I didn't expect everything to be perfect overnight, but I knew that if we kept taking these small steps, we could rebuild what had been broken. The next morning, we woke up early to watch the sunrise. As we stood there, overlooking the mountains, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like there was hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could get through this together. The morning after the sunrise, I stood there with Luke and Jenna, feeling the crisp mountain air and watching as the world slowly came to life around us. For the first time in a long time, there was a sense of calm in the air, a sense of unity that we hadn't had in years. It felt like the walls that had been built between us were starting to crumble, piece by piece. We spent the rest of the day exploring the woods around the cabin, hiking along trails that I had once walked with my husband, back when everything felt so much simpler. There were moments, brief but powerful, when Luke would smile at me in that way he used to, when Jenna would look my way and nod, as if silently acknowledging the changes that were taking place. But the most important change was in me. I wasn't just the mother or the mother-in-law anymore. I was Eleanor, a woman who had been through a lot, who had endured a great deal, but who was still standing strong. The days passed slowly, with long conversations around the fire and laughter that had been absent for so long. Luke shared stories from his childhood, moments I had forgotten, and Jenna started to open up as well, telling me about the pressure she felt, the things that had been weighing on her. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough for me. As we prepared to leave the cabin and head back home, I couldn't help but feel a mixture of emotions. I was grateful for the time we had spent together, but I knew that we weren't completely healed. There were still things to work through, still barriers to break down. But the fact that we were talking, that we were taking steps to move forward, made all the difference. On the drive back, the conversation flowed more easily. Luke was quieter than usual, but there was a calmness in his demeanor that hadn't been there before. And Jenna, though still distant at times, seemed more relaxed, more present in the moment. When we got back to the house, there was a brief moment of hesitation as we stood at the door. It felt like we were about to step into a new chapter, and none of us knew what it would bring. But I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let the past define me anymore. I wasn't going to let the mistakes, the pain, and the misunderstandings shape who I was. I had spent so much time being the quiet one, the one who always gave in, always put others first. But now, I was learning to stand up for myself. I was learning to speak my truth, to make my voice heard. And most importantly, I was learning to let go of the hurt, to forgive, and to allow space for healing. That night, after Luke and Jenna had gone home, I sat alone in my living room, the familiar quiet surrounding me. I looked around at the house, at the family photos, at the memories of a time when things were different. But as I sat there, I realized that I didn't need to look back anymore. The past was gone, and what mattered now was the future. The future that I was going to create, not just for myself, but for my family. The next few months were a journey. There were ups and downs, moments of tension and moments of clarity. But through it all, I never lost sight of what I had learned, that I had the power to change the course of my own life. I wasn't just the mother or the wife or the grandmother. I was Eleanor, a woman who had been through so much and had come out stronger for it. A woman who had found her voice and was ready to use it. And as I looked ahead, I knew that there were still challenges to face, still wounds to heal, but I was no longer afraid. The journey wasn't over, but it was mine to walk, and I was ready to take the next step.